Cyber Threat Brief for July 21, 2026. WordPress core WP2 shell vulnerabilities are under active exploitation with widespread scanning. Sonic Wall VPN appliances compromised for weeks via 0 days before patches dropped. And Iranian espionage operators are hiding command traffic inside Microsoft 365 calendar events dated to 2050. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, deadlines for the Sonic Wall flaws passed on July 17. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Cyber Threat Brief, July 21, 2026. Next section, Critical Alerts. WordPress WP2 shell remote code execution, CVE 2026-63030. CVE 2026-60137. WordPress core contains 2 chain vulnerabilities that enable unauthenticated remote code execution on default installations without plugins. CVE 2026-63030 is a REST API, batch route confusion flaw, is a SQL injection vulnerability in WordPress core. The combination allows anonymous attackers to turn a single HTTP request into code execution. Is on CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, deadline July 19, EPSS. The exploit prediction scoring system, 95th percentile, sits at EPSS 89th percentile. Searchlight Cyber disclosed the flaw using OpenAI GPT-5. 6 SOL after 10 hours of automated analysis. Public exploit code is circulating. KEV Intel tracked 13 unique IP addresses exploiting the vulnerability from Switzerland, Germany, UK, Indonesia, Lithuania, Netherlands, and Singapore. Watchtower confirmed successful exploitation started Saturday morning UTC with credential exfiltration, followed by full RCE as details spread. Wiz reports 60% of organizations running WordPress had at least one vulnerable instance at disclosure, 25% exposed to the internet. Host exploitation activity includes malicious plugin uploads, user enumeration, local file inclusion to steal database credentials, admin panel authentication, and deployment of a 150 kilobytes web shell disguised as the CM SMAP security plugin that supports file management, database access, port scanning, batch code injection, and privilege escalation modules including MySQL UDF exploits, and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: patch immediately to the latest WordPress version. Check for indicators of compromise including unauthorized plugins, new admin users, modified database credentials, web shells, or file changes in WP content /. Scan logs for REST API batch endpoint abuse /batch/v1 and SQL injection patterns in author exclude parameters. If vulnerable, assume compromise. WordPress runs on hundreds of millions of sites globally. Hosting providers will auto-patch some, but many will not. This is critical infrastructure exposure. Sources: The Hacker News, The Hacker News Sans. Sonic Wall SMA 0 days exploited pre-patch. CVE 2026-15409. CVE 2026-15410-2 0-day vulnerabilities in Sonic Wall, secure mobile access, 1000 series VPN appliances were exploited in the wild for nearly a month before patches released on July 14. CVE 2026-15409. CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 10.0, CISA KEV deadline July 17, EPSS 67th percentile, and CVE 2026-15410, CVSS 7.2, CISA KEV deadline July 17, EPSS 71st percentile, can be chained for arbitrary command execution and device takeover by remote unauthenticated attackers. Volksity attributes the activity to UTA 0533. A previously undocumented threat actor that deployed custom malware to compromised appliances starting June 22. The attackers installed knuckleball malware, which injected 2 additional tools into legitimate processes: Orangetail, a tailored Java web shell, and Suo5, an open-source proxy. With root access, attackers accessed stored or cached credentials, captured network traffic, and intercepted credentials processed by the appliances. Despite significant capability on the VPN devices, available evidence suggests the actor was less successful moving laterally or gaining access to other systems. CISA's KEV catalog now includes 17 flaws affecting Sonic Wall products. Action: apply Sonic Wall hotfixes immediately for SMA 1000 series. Hunt for Knuckleball, Orangetail, and Suo5 malware indicators. Review VPN appliance logs for unauthorized access, credential harvesting, or network traffic interception starting June 22. Check for lateral movement attempts from compromised SMA devices. Rotate credentials for any accounts accessible through these appliances. Sources: The Hacker News Security Week. Next section, Ransomware and Extortion. Forge ransomware targets AI infrastructure. CVE 2025-3248. JPuffer, the AI agent-driven operator, has deployed Forge, a compiled Go ransomware designed to encrypt model weights, vector indexes, training datasets, and AI infrastructure files. Entry point remains CVE 2025-3248, an unauthenticated remote code execution flaw in Langflow, API endpoint/API/v1/validate/code, affecting versions before 1.3.0. CVSS 9.8. CIS a KEV deadline May 26, 2025. EPSS 100th percentile. Forge replaces the improvised Python scripts and MySQL encryption seen in earlier campaigns with compiled tooling aimed at model stores, vector databases, and training pipelines. The binary is a UPX5. 20-pack static Go 1.22.12 ELF hidden as / locked on the command and control server. It targets approximately 180 file extensions including PyTorch and TensorFlow checkpoints, Hugging Face safe tensors, ONCs, GGUF, GGML, FAIS vector indexes, Parquet and Arrow datasets, NumPy arrays, and TensorFlow records. Include flag lets operators append additional file globs. The built-in help text specifically names low RA fine-tuning adapters and legacy GGML weights. Forge uses AES 256 CTR for file data with per-run symmetric keys wrapped under an embedded RSA 2048 public key. It encrypts selected regions, not whole files, for speed, kills processes holding files open, handles restarts without re-encrypting completed files, drops ransom notes as readme/how-to-decrypt/readme decrypt, and deletes itself after running. Extortion contact is E78393397 at proton.me, the same Proton mail address used in prior JPuffer campaigns. No exfiltration capability was found in the binary. Action: patch Langflow to version 1.3.0 or later. Monitor for unauthorized access to /API/v1/validate/code endpoint. Hunt for UPX-backed Go binaries, locked file extensions, or ransom notes. Search for the E78393397 at proton.me contact in ransom notes as a campaign indicator. Backup AI model files, training datasets, and vector indexes offline. Source: The Hacker News. Ransomware payment bans, vs. Reality: nearly half of ransomware victims pay ransoms according to 2025 Sophos research, and the median ransom demand continues rising. The UK government is advancing plans to ban public sector bodies and critical national infrastructure, NHS, local councils, schools, from making payments. Confirmed ransomware victims rose 389% year-over-year in 2025, from 1,600 in 2024 to 7,831 globally, driven by malicious AI hacking tools like Worm GPT, Fraud GPT, and Brute Force AI. Attackers can now target 4 organizations simultaneously in the time it previously took to commit one attack. The cost per attack has dropped while the cost to defend increases. What required nation-states earlier can now be accomplished by individuals with limited skills leveraging AI. The debate over whether to pay remains divisive. Sentinel-1 takes a hard line against payment, noting that paying strengthens the ecosystem, threat actors cannot be trusted to delete data, re-extortion is commonplace, and paying does not guarantee recovery. Others note concern with blanket bans when data recovery is not feasible, as situations are more nuanced than a ban accounts for. Action: prioritize prevention and recovery capabilities over payment planning. Maintain offline backups. Test restoration procedures. Understand that payment does not guarantee data deletion or prevent re-extortion. Source: Ars Technica. Next section, business and infrastructure threats. Holograph espionage via Microsoft 365 Calendar. A newly discovered espionage implant named Holograph uses a hijacked Microsoft 365 Calendar as its command channel, planting operator instructions and smuggling out stolen files as attachments on calendar events dated to the year 2050. Group IB ties the malware to Cavern, a modular backdoor framework attributed to Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and security-linked Cavern Manicore, with high confidence based on shared command syntax and matching internal tasking. The NetDLL dynamic link library implant supports 2 commands, get and send, and never reaches out to attacker-owned servers. Instead, it treats the compromised mailbox's calendar as a 2-way dead drop. To pull tasking, it queries the calendar for events buried at 2050-0513, so the mailbox owner is unlikely to scroll to it, and reads instructions from attached files. To exfiltrate, It encrypts stolen files, creates far future events, and uploads data as attachments. Everything moving through the calendar is wrapped in hybrid RSA and AES-256 encryption. A second CRUDR channel over DNS refreshes Entra ID login details. Tenant ID, client secret, and target mailbox are decoded from IP6 AA records sent by attacker domain cloudlinkedin.com and written to log Azure. TXT. Group IB found the implant on at least 12 machines with victim traffic running June 3 to July 9, 2026. The compromised exfiltration mailbox belongs to an Israeli organization. There is no Microsoft vulnerability. HoloGraph rides a compromised account and the Graph API's normal functionality. Action: hunt for calendar events with far future dates, specifically 2050-0513, subjects that are bare GUID or match event ID or boss ID. Naming and attachments named filen. TXT. Restrict and audit client credential OAuth apps that can reach Graph. Alert on newly created client secrets. Implement conditional access, credential rotation, and anomalous token detection. Monitor Microsoft Graph API and mailbox activity for application-driven calendar changes. Sources: The Hacker News, The Register Securalist, Kaspersky. BEC phishing with fileless evasion, the TFF trap. Attackers are impersonating well-known companies, FedEx and other logistics firms, to drop RATs and infostealers in a wide-scale phishing campaign designed for maximum evasion. Fortinet has tracked the campaign since late March, dubbed the TFF trap for its use of TrueType font, TTF, files to hide auto IT/Lua loaders. The attack deploys Agent Tesla, Rimco's, Xworm, and Best Private Logger targeting Microsoft Windows systems. Initial engagement is business email compromise using messages that mimic business cooperation from companies familiar to victims. Attackers built evasion into each stage. The attack begins with a heavily obfuscated JavaScript attachment that establishes persistence and launches a second-stage loader. Instead of dropping a conventional executable, the malware deploys a legitimate Lua JIT or auto-it interpreter alongside a file disguised as TTF that contains encrypted Lua bytecode. The interpreter decrypts and executes malicious code directly in memory, performs anti-analysis checks, unhooks Windows APIs monitored by endpoint security tools, and reflectively loads the final payload without writing it to disk. Obfuscation confuses static analysis, abuse of trusted interpreters blends malicious activity with legitimate processes, and the fake font file conceals the payload from extension-based filtering. Action: train users on phishing recognition, especially messages impersonating logistics companies. Hunt for TTF files that are not legitimate fonts, Lua JIT or auto-it interpreters launched from user directories, obfuscated JavaScript attachments, and in-memory execution patterns. Monitor for API unhooking and reflective loading techniques. Source: Dark Reading. ServiceNow AI Platform RCE exploited. CVE 2026-6875. A critical remote code execution vulnerability in the ServiceNow AI platform is being exploited days after disclosure. CVE 2026-6875 is a sandbox escape issue that unauthenticated attackers can exploit in certain circumstances to execute arbitrary code. ServiceNow announced patches on July 14, stating a security update had been deployed to hosted instances. Self-hosted customers must install patches themselves. Searchlight Cyber disclosed technical details and a proof of concept the same day. Diffused reported in the wild exploitation on July 18, leveraging Searchlight's information. Closer analysis showed the captured payload was identical to Searchlight Cyber's own proof of concept. ServiceNow stated it had not observed evidence that this activity is related to instances the company hosts. There is a chance the activity is being carried out by members of the cybersecurity industry seeking vulnerable systems. ServiceNow vulnerabilities are not often exploited by threat actors. CISA's KEV catalog currently includes only 2 flaws, both patched in 2024. Action: self-hosted ServiceNow customers must apply patches immediately. Review logs for unauthorized access to AI platform sandbox endpoints. Monitor for abnormal code execution patterns. Source: Security Week. OpenSSL HoloByte DOS flaw. Octa Red Team disclosed HoloByte, a denial of service flaw in OpenSSL. By sending a malicious payload of just 11 bytes, a remote unauthenticated attacker can force a server to allocate disproportionate chunks of memory before any security handshake begins. An unauthenticated attacker, through 11 bytes of carefully crafted data, can convince OpenSSL to reserve up to 128 kilobytes of heap memory for a handshake message that never arrives, causing a server to exhaust available RAM and trigger a DOS condition. The OpenSSL team resolved the issue in versions 4.0.1, 3.6.3, 3.5.7, 3.4.6, and 3.0.21. Instead of trusting the header outright, OpenSSL now grows the buffer only as bytes actually land on the wire. A claim with no follow-through now costs the server nothing. Action: update OpenSSL to versions 4.0.1, 3.6.3, 3.5.7, 3.4.6, or 3.0.21. Monitor for memory exhaustion patterns or DOS conditions on TLS endpoints. Source: The Hacker News. Next section, General Security News. Ivanti uses LLMs for vulnerability remediation. Ivanti disclosed CVE 2026-10520, a critical maximum severity flaw in its Sentry mobile gateway product. CVSS 10.0, CIS a KEV deadline June 14, EPSS 100th percentile. The vulnerability was discovered by an LLM, not a security researcher, third-party vendor, or Ivanti's own engineers. Ivanti's CSO Daniel Spicer says the company began using advanced models, Claude Opus 4.6, in late February to increase engineering and product security capabilities for identifying and fixing vulnerabilities that evade traditional tooling. The company runs two tracks, automatically resolving vulnerabilities and finding vulnerabilities that existing tooling misses. On the resolution side, the goal is to grab SAS/DAST weaknesses in advance, resolve them, and resubmit to the engineer rather than directing manual fixes. Ivanti purchased direct licenses with Anthropic to support these use cases, coinciding with Anthropic's Project Glasswing announcement. Frontier model improvements are coming quickly, and costs remain under evaluation. Action: none immediately. This is a vendor capability announcement. The underlying CVE 2026-10520 Ivanti Sentry flaw was previously disclosed and is on CIS a KEV with a June 14 deadline. Source: Dark Reading. Next section, Patch Priority. WordPress Core, Critical Unauthenticated RCE, CVE 2026-63030, CVE 2026-60137, Active Exploitation, Public Exploits Available. Sonic Wall SMA 1000, Critical 0 Days Exploited Prepatch, CVE 2026-15409, CVE 2026-15410, CIS a KEV deadlines past July 17. Langflow API, Critical AI Ransomware Targeting, CVE 2025-3248, CIS a KEV since May 2025. OpenSSL, Moderate DOS Vire 11-byte payload, patched to 4.0.1, /3.6.3/3.5.7/3.4.6/3.0.21. ServiceNow AI Platform Critical Sandbox Escape RCE CVE 2026-6875 Self-hosted customers must patch. Next section, Vulnerability Disclosures. Ivanti Sentry CVE 2026-10520 Ivanti Sentry Mobile Gateway contains a critical maximum severity vulnerability, CVSS 10.0, discovered by LLM analysis. The flaw is on CIS a KEV with a June 14 deadline and sits at EPSS 100th percentile. This was the first publicly disclosed vulnerability found by an AI model rather than human researchers. Action: patch Ivanti Sentry immediately per vendor guidance. CIS a KEV deadline was June 14. Source: Dark Reading. Microsoft Security Update Guide, 27 Linux kernel CVEs. Microsoft published 27 Linux kernel CVEs in its Security Update Guide, all with low EPSS scores, 2nd to 23rd percentile. These include validation issues in KSMBD, USB Type-C, ALSA, DRM/AMD, KVM, NetFilter, and other kernel subsystems. All carry CVSS severity ratings around 7.0.8, 0 medium to high. None are reported as exploited or on CIS a KEV. Action: apply kernel updates per your Linux distribution's security advisories. None of these flaws are urgent but should be included in routine patching cycles. Sources: multiple MSRC entries, CVE 2026-64138 through CVE 2026-63964. Next section, Trends and Context. This week's stories highlight the collision of AI-powered offense and defense. WordPress WP2 shell was discovered by OpenAI GPT-5.6 after 10 hours of automated analysis and is now under mass exploitation, demonstrating how AI lowers the skill floor for both vulnerability discovery and weaponization. Ivanti's use of LLMs for vulnerability remediation and discovery shows defensive teams adopting the same technology. A 389% year-over-year increase in ransomware victims, fueled by tools like Worm GPT and Fraud GPT, confirms that AI has commoditized sophisticated attacks while raising the cost to defend. Meanwhile, Iranian espionage operators are embedding C2 channels in Microsoft 365 calendar events dated to 2050, and Sonic Wall VPN appliances were compromised for nearly a month before patches dropped. The pattern is clear. Attackers are automating faster than defenders, exploiting trust in legitimate services, Graph API, WordPress REST API, VPN appliances, and targeting both traditional infrastructure and emerging AI environments with purpose-built ransomware. That concludes today's cyber threat brief. From Carolina Clear Tech, stay patched, stay vigilant.